Have you ever been stuck in one of those bureaucratic loops? Where every person you call just sends you right back to the person you just spoke to? Well, today we're looking at the story of Tamitra Nunn, a woman who got trapped in that exact kind of maddening circle, all while trying to get the disability benefits she was legally owed. It's a pretty powerful look at what happens when a safety net feels more like a maze.
So let's just start with this phone call. It perfectly sums up the whole frustrating situation Tamitra was in. She'd already won her case, right? But when she calls to ask the simple question, "Where's my money?" she gets this classic runaround. This one quote, it just gets right to the heart of the problem. A system of circles with zero clear answers. So to really get what happened here, we're going to break it down. We'll start with that crazy bureaucratic loop, then look at how her benefits got stopped in the first place. We'll walk through her fight, her big win, and then get into the messy battle for the money she's owed. And finally, we'll ask, what does this all say about the system itself? All right, first up, this system of circles. This whole mess is perfectly captured in a single phone call, all centered on one simple question that apparently nobody was able to answer. Look, Tamitra's goal was so simple. After a huge, long fight, a judge had finally ruled in her favor. Her disability was confirmed, her benefits were supposed to be restored. All she wanted to know was, where are my payments? I mean, that should have been the easy part, right? So she does the logical thing. She calls the hearing office that made the decision. But what she gets is basically a bureaucratic brick wall. They tell her, look, we just deal with whether you're disabled or not. We don't deal with the payments. And their solution? Oh, just call the main Social Security hotline, the giant national 800 number. Push the problem off to some other more anonymous part of the system. And this is where the whole impossible loop just snaps into focus. Tamitra has to explain to them that the national 800 number was the very place that told her they couldn't help and that she needed to call them, the local office. It's just this endless, maddening circle, and she's stuck right in the middle. So you have to be wondering, how did this all even start? How does someone who was receiving disability benefits for years suddenly get cut off and find herself fighting the exact system that was supposed to be her lifeline? Let's rewind a bit. The main thing to get from this timeline is that this wasn't a new claim. Her disability was established way back in 2011. She'd been getting benefits for years. But then, bam, October 2019, that lifeline is just gone. And then 2 years later, a judge actually upholds that decision, leaving her with no income and a huge fight on her hands. Now, of course, there were two totally different stories here. The Social Security Administration, the SSA, they claimed her benefits were stopped because she failed to cooperate and because of medical improvement. But Tamitra's reality was completely different. She argued she was never even properly told about these reviews, and, most importantly, that there was absolutely no medical improvement. In fact, she had new evidence showing her disability was still severe. Okay, so let's get into the appeal. Her fight to get her benefits back wasn't just about saying the decision was wrong. It was about proving that the SSA didn't even follow its own rules. At the heart of all this is something called the Medical Improvement Review Standard, and it's super important. Basically, the law says the SSA can't just decide you're better. They have to prove it with substantial new medical evidence, like new lab results or new clinical findings, that show you can now work. It's a really high bar for them to clear. And this is where the SSA's case just falls apart. Her appeal pointed out all these critical errors. First, the judge didn't cite any new evidence of actual medical improvement. None. Instead, the whole thing was based on her lack of treatment, completely ignoring the fact that she couldn't afford treatment without the very benefits they had just cut off. And maybe the most stunning part, they violated her due process rights by cutting her off immediately, instead of giving her the legally required 12-month warning period. So after this long, tough process of picking apart that flawed ruling, Tamitra finally gets a new decision. This was supposed to be the victory lap, but as we're about to see, it was far from the end of the road. So in 2024, a new judge rules in her favor. The old decision is reversed. Her disability is confirmed. The termination was wrong. This should have been it, the final chapter, a total validation of everything she had been fighting for. But winning the legal argument was just one mountain to climb. Now she was facing a new and somehow even more confusing one, actually getting the years of payments she had been so wrongfully denied. Just let this number sink in. Based on her monthly benefit amount, for the 61 months she went without a single payment, Tamitra calculated she was owed an estimated $118,000. I mean, this was the money she was supposed to live on for over 5 years. So instead of a clear explanation or a check, she gets letters, like this one. It's so confusing, it's almost unbelievable. This letter mentions a future payment of about $6,000. But then it also says they're reducing her benefits by over $13,000 because of how different programs interact. How on earth are you supposed to make sense of that?
So let's just lay out this payment puzzle, because it's pretty wild. Out of almost $119,000 she was owed, she got 2 small initial payments. They added up to just over 10 grand. That left this massive gap, over $100,000, with no clear timeline, no explanation for when or even if the rest was ever going to show up.
You know, Tamitra's story is so much more than just one person's unfortunate case. It really is a lens that lets us see the huge structural problems that people are up against when they try to navigate this so-called social safety net.
When you step back and look at her entire journey, a few things become painfully clear. The burden of proof, it was all put on her, the most vulnerable person in this whole equation. Simple mistakes in paperwork had devastating real-world costs. And it proves that just winning your case doesn't mean the problem is solved. To get what you're owed from the system that's supposed to help you, you need this almost superhuman level of persistence.
And all of this, it leaves us with a really tough question. Tamitra had the strength to fight for years, to make all those calls, to just not give up. But what about the people who can't? When the safety net has this many holes, you really have to ask, who gets to fall through?